Let's start off our broadcast with the latest that is coming in from Washington, where the Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has arrived in the United States. Now, Biden and Suga will be holding a summit in which they are expected to present a united front on Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory. The two leaders will also be discussing Beijing's treatment of the Uighur minority Muslims in the Xinjiang province and also of Beijing's influence over Hong Kong. The two leaders are likely to announce a $2 billion Japanese investment in 5G telecommunications to counter China's Huawei technologies. This will, of course, be Biden's first in-person meeting with Yoshihide Suga. All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of why this visit by Yoshihide Suga is so important, we're joined in by our correspondent Nick Harper, who's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Nick, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast on WION. Now, this, of course, is a crucial summit meeting between Biden and Yoshihide Suga. What can we expect from this?
Yeah, it certainly is. And as you mentioned, his first in-person meeting with another world leader. Interesting to note that it is the Japanese Prime Minister. Normally, the US President might turn to Canada or Mexico or the United Kingdom for a first in-person meeting. The fact that he's turned to Asia and says a lot about President Biden's priorities. And really, it all comes down to China, because the ability for the Prime Minister of Japan and the President of the United States to come together and show that united front very much signals to Beijing that the US is working closely with allies. China will be the main topic of conversation between the two men, undoubtedly. The human rights abuses in Xinjiang is likely to top the bill. There will be a joint press conference between the two of them in which they're expected to put out a statement, both countries pushing back against the treatment of the Uyghurs by Beijing. What will be interesting to note, though, is exactly how far Japan decides to go. The US, of course, in the past has said that there has been genocide there, has also slapped sanctions on Beijing. That is something that Japan has not done. It has not so far sanctioned Beijing for its alleged treatment of the Uyghurs. It'll be interesting to see whether it decides to up the ante once Prime Minister Suga meets with President Biden.
Absolutely, indeed. That is a very crucial meeting. Do continue to stay on with this, Nick, because I want you to weigh in on another important story that we are tracking. And this, of course, is to do with the dramatic escalation of the US-Russia tensions, where Washington has now announced a range of new sanctions against Russia in response to the alleged interference in the 2020 US elections. Cyber hacking and bullying Ukraine are amongst some of the other reasons as to why these sanctions have been imposed. The Russian cyber attacks had allegedly targeted the 2020 US elections in actions which have been termed as anti-Biden, although it was Joe Biden that emerged victorious in the election. After announcing the sanctions against Russia, US President Joe Biden has said that now is the time to de-escalate for both the countries. But Biden also has added that it was pretty important for him and Vladimir Putin to meet in person so that the two countries could actually launch a strategic stability dialogue on a whole host of different issues.
Now is the time to de-escalate. The way forward is through thoughtful dialogue and diplomatic process. The U.S. is prepared to continue constructively to move toward that process. My bottom line is this: where there's an interest in the United States to work with Russia, we should and we will. Where Russia seeks to violate the interests of the United States, we will respond.
Now, the measures, of course, have come at a time when the relations between the United States and Russia are pretty tense, and the move targets nearly about 32 Russian entities, including the expulsion of at least about 10 Russian diplomats. The United States has accused Russia of malicious cyber activity and interference in the 2020 presidential elections. The executive order also bars U.S. financial institutions from purchasing ruble-denominated bonds from the month of June. Now, according to the White House, the measures detailed in an executive order signed by President Joe Biden are aimed at deterring Russia's harmful foreign activities. And following the United States, the United Kingdom has also summoned the Russian ambassador over malign activity. And Poland has also interestingly expelled 3 Russian diplomats for hostile actions, while the European Union has voiced support for the United States in its actions. Now, reacting to the new sanctions, the Russian Foreign Ministry has said that a response to the new US sanctions will be inevitable. The ministry has also summoned the US ambassador to Moscow, John Sullivan, over this issue. And also describing this move by the Americans as a bit of nonsense, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service has dismissed the US claims that Russia was somehow involved in cyber attacks on US infrastructure and also in meddling in the 2020 US presidential elections.
The response to the sanctions will be unavoidable. Washington must realize that they have to pay for the deterioration of bilateral relations. The United States of America are fully responsible for what is happening. I would also like to say that Russian Foreign Ministry has summoned the US ambassador. We will share with you additional information on the outcome of this conversation, which will be uneasy for the US side.
All right, and my colleague Nick Harper is still with me. Now, Nick, I want you to, in fact, weigh in on the American strategy here, because it appears to be a bit of a blow-hot, blow-cold approach by the Americans in trying to take forward their ties with the Russians. Yesterday, we heard of this phone call between Joe Biden and President Vladimir Putin, and it was also said that the two leaders would like to meet in a third nation, which would be neutral. And then, subsequent to that, we heard of these sanctions imposed by the Americans on Russians. And now, Joe Biden has said that he would like to have a constructive relationship with Russia. How is this relationship progressing?
Well, it seems like an incredible thing to state. Effectively, President Biden is saying to the Russians, look, we're going ahead and we're punishing you. At the same time, we want to work closely with you. Joe Biden describing the possibility of future talks with President Putin as moving forward through thoughtful dialogue and diplomatic process. The Russians are unlikely to feel very warm-hearted, though, towards the Americans after those 32 Russian entities and individuals have been sanctioned, after 10 of their diplomats have been expelled from Washington. It is an approach, I think, from the Biden administration that's trying to show that they are being tough on Russia in a way that they don't feel that the Trump administration was. Upping these sanctions. We saw other sanctions just last month in response to the poisoning of the Kremlin critic, Mr. Navalny. So we are seeing the Biden administration going strong, going hard against Russia, but also saying that there are areas of cooperation. It's the same tactic and approach that the Biden administration is using with China, saying that there will be areas where they will compete, but there will be areas where they hope to collaborate. But it is hard to see that meeting, that summit that President Biden suggested just a couple of days ago happening in the summer, because the Kremlin are already saying that that is very unlikely, considering what the US has decided to do with these sanctions.
Absolutely indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Nick Harper, for joining us and getting us all those updates there.